Hello and welcome. I thought I'd share a favourite story of mine with you, the story of Tuan Mac Cairill. Now this version comes from a wonderful Irish writer of the early 20th century, a guy called James Stephens, and it's in a collection of his retellings of Irish myths, which is rather oddly called Irish Fairy Tales. I love this book because of Stephens' dry wit and beautiful use of language. I've edited the story quite a bit, just to make the video a reasonable length, so I hope that these things will come through in the story, and maybe you'll decide to read the whole book. You can actually read it online at sacredtexts.com, or pick up a second-hand copy for just a few pennies. Now, Irish mythology says that Ireland had 6 waves of invaders, with the Tuatha Dé Danann being the 5th, and the Gaels being the last. But how can we possibly know this if none of the early waves of invaders lived to tell the tale? Well, as they say, there's always one. Eventually, the time of the gods, and the time when the Gaels lived in harmony with them, passed into the time of the saints of Ireland, and Columba and Patrick and the like were busy going about trying to convert everyone, and that's where this tale begins. Now Finian, the abbot of Moville, went southwards and eastwards in great haste. News had come to him in Donegal there were yet people in his own province who believed in gods that he did not approve of, and the gods that we do not approve of are treated scurvily, even by saintly men. He was told of a powerful gentleman who observed neither Saint's Day nor Sunday. "A powerful person," said Finian. "All that," was the reply. "We shall try this person's power," said Finian. "He is," the gossip whispered. "He is a magician." "I will magician him," cried Finian angrily. "Where does this man live?" He was informed, and he proceeded to that direction without delay. But the Ulster gentleman refused Finian admittance. He barricaded his house, he shuttered his windows, and in a gloom of indignation and protest he continued the practices of 10,000 years, and would not hearken to Finian calling at the windows, or to time knocking at his door. Now Finian could not abide that any person should resist both the gospel and himself, and he proceeded to force the stronghold by peaceful but powerful methods. He fasted on the gentleman, and he did so to such purpose that he was admitted to the house, for to an hospitable heart the idea that a stranger may expire on your doorstep from sheer famine cannot be tolerated. The first day passed quietly. Often the gentleman would send a servitor to spy if that deserter of the gods was still before his door, and each time the servant replied that yes, he was still there. "Ah, he'll be gone in the morning," said the hopeful master. But on the morrow the state of siege continued, and through that day the servants were sent many times to observe through spy holes. "Oh, the new druid is still there," they said. They took fright at the spectacle, and once or twice a woman screamed hysterically and was bundled away with a companion's hand clapped on her mouth, so that the ear of their master should not be affronted. The household retired to wretched beds, but for the master of the house there was no sleep. He marched his halls all night, going often to the spy hole to see if that shadow was still sitting in the shade. On the morrow he gave in. The great door was swung wide, and 2 of his servants carried Finian into the house, for the saint could no longer walk or stand upright by reason of the hunger and exposure to which he had submitted. One day they were talking together about the majesty of God and his love, for although Tuan had now received much instruction on this subject, he yet needed more. Then Finian said, "Tell me about yourself, dear heart." "I am indeed Tuan, the son of Starn, the son of Serra, who was the brother to Partholon." "But," said Finian in bewilderment, "there's an error here, for you have recited 2 different genealogies." "Different genealogies indeed," replied Tuan thoughtfully, "but they're my genealogies." "I do not understand this," Finian declared roundly. "I am now known as Tuan Mac Cairill," the other replied, "but in the days of old I was known as Tuan Mac Cairill. "The brother of Partholon," the saint gasped. "That is my pedigree," said Tuan. But Finian objected in bewilderment. "Partholon came to Ireland not long after the flood." "I came with him," said Tuan mildly. "Tell me of the beginning of time in Ireland, and of the bearing of Partholon, the son of Noah's son." "I've almost forgotten him," said Tuan. "He came to Ireland in a ship. 24 men and 24 women came with him. Partholon's people increased. From 24 couples there came 5,000 people, and they lived in amity and contentment, although they had no wits. Then, sudden as a rising wind, between one night and a morning, there came a sickness that bloated the stomach and purpled the skin, and on the 7th day all the race of Partholon were dead, save only one man." "There always escapes one man," said Fintan thoughtfully. "And I am that man," his companion affirmed. Tuan shaded his brow with his hand, and he remembered backward through incredible ages to the beginning of the world and the first days of Era, and Finian, with his blood again running chill and his scalp crawling uneasily, stared backward with him. "I was alone," said Tuan. "I was so alone that the sound of a bird in flight or the creaking of a dew-drenched bough whipped me to cover as a rabbit is scared to his burrow. I could pad as gently as any, I could run as tirelessly, I could be invisible and patient as a wild cat crouching among leaves. I could smell danger in my sleep and leap at it with wakeful claws. I could bark and growl and clash my teeth and tear with them. My heart leapt for joy when I saw a great fleet rounding the land, and I followed them along scarped cliffs, leaping from rock to rock like a wild goat, while the ships tacked and swung, seeking a harbor. There I stooped to drink at a pool, and I saw myself in the chill water. I saw that I was hairy and tufty and bristled as a savage boar, that I was as lean as a stripped bush, that I was grayer than a badger, withered and wrinkled like an empty sack. A storm rose, and when I looked again from my tall cliff, I saw that great fleet rolling as in a giant's hand. At times they were pitched against the sky and staggered aloft, spinning gustily there like wind-blown leaves. A wave fell on a ship and sunk it down with a thrust, stern as though a whole sky had tumbled at it, and the bark did not cease to go down until it crashed and sank in the sand at the bottom of the sea. I fell asleep, or I was beaten into slumber. There I dreamed, and I saw myself changing into a stag in the dream. And I felt in dream the beating of a new heart within me, and in dream I arched my neck and braced my powerful limbs. I awoke from the dream, and I was that which I had dreamed. I stood for a while stamping upon a rock, with my bristling head swung high, breathing through wide nostrils all the savour of the world, for I had come marvellously from decrepitude to strength. But one time I came, drawn by that intolerable anguish of memory, and all of these people were gone. The place that knew them was silent. In the land where they had moved, there was nothing about them but their bones that glinted in the sun. Old age came to me there. Among these bones, weariness crept into my limbs. My head grew heavy, my eyes dim, my knees jerked and trembled, and there the wolves dared chase me. I went again to the cave that had been my home when I was an old man. One day I stole from the cave to snatch a mouthful of grass, for I was closely besieged by wolves. "Tomorrow," they said, "we will tear out your throat and gnaw on your living haunch." I slept, and I saw myself changing into a boar in dream, and I felt in dream the beating of a new heart within me, and in dream I stretched my powerful neck and braced my eager limbs. I awoke from my dream, and I was that which I had dreamed. The night wore away, the darkness lifted, the day came, and from without the cave the wolves called to me, "Come out, O skinny stag, come out and die!" And I, with joyful heart, thrust a black bristle through the hole of the cave, and when they saw that wriggling snout, those curving tusks, that red, fierce eye, the wolves fled yelping and tumbling over each other, frantic with terror, and I behind them, a wild cat for leaping, a giant for strength, a devil for ferocity, a madness and gladness of lusty, unsparing life, a killer, a champion, a boar who could not be defied. I took the lordship of the boars of Ireland. Old age again overtook me. Weariness stole into my limbs, and anguish dozed into my mind. I went to my Ulster cave and dreamt my dream, and I changed into a hawk. I left the ground. The sweet air was my kingdom, and my bright eyes stared on 100 miles. I soared, I swooped, I hung motionless as a living stone over the abyss. I lived in joy and in peace, and I had my fill of the sweetness of life. During that time, Beoch, the son of Yarbinel, the prophet, came to Ireland with his people, and there was a great battle between his men and the men of Semyon. Long I hung over that combat, seeing every spear that hurtled, every stone that whizzed from a sling, every sword that flashed up and down, and the endless glittering of the shields. And at the end I saw that the victory was with Yarbinel, and from his people the Tuan de Danann and the Ande came, although their origin is forgotten, and learned people, because of their excellent wisdom and intelligence, say that they came from heaven. Then I grew old, and in my Ulster cave close to the sea I dreamed my dream, and in it I became a salmon. The green tides of ocean rose over me in my dreams, so that I drowned in the sea and did not die, for I awoke in deep waters, and I was that which I dreamed. I had been a man, a stag, a boar, a bird, and now I was a fish. In all my changes I had joy and fullness of life, but in the water joy lay deeper, life pulsed deeper, for on land or air there is always something excessive and hindering, as arms that swing at the sides of a man, and which the mind must remember. How I flew through that soft element, how I joyed in the country where there's no harshness, in the element which upholds and gives way, which caresses and lets go, and will not let you fall. I became the king of the salmon, and with my multitudes I ranged on the tides of the world. Green and purple distances were under me, green and gold the sunlit regions above. I fought my way to Ulster from the sea. Ah, how the end of that journey was hard! A sickness was racking in every one of my bones, a languor and weariness creeping through my every fibre and muscle. Every beast perused me in the waters and along the banks. The barking black-skinned otter came after me in lust and gust and swirl. The wild cat fished for me. The hawk and the steep-winged, spear-beaked birds dived down on me, and men crept on me with nets the width of the river, so that I got no rest. My life became a ceaseless scurry and wound and escape, a burden and anguish of watchfulness, and then I was caught. The fisherman of Cairill, the king of Ulster, took me in his net. Ah, that was a happy man when he saw me. He shouted for joy when he saw the great salmon in his net. When the king's wife saw me, she desired me. I was put over a fire and roasted, and she ate me. And when time passed, she gave birth to me, and I was her son, and the son of Cairill the king. I remember warmth and darkness and movement, unseen sounds. All that happened I remember, from the time I was on the gridiron until the time I was born. I forget nothing of these things. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting my work by becoming my patron on Patreon. You can get access to exclusive videos and other content, and help me keep making videos like this one. If you'd like to visit my blog or buy books and things from my online shop, please visit my website. There are links to everything below this video. Thanks for listening.